When I was a child, I was so interested in learning the language. And even I loved how English sounded. So this was my wish to learn the language. So eventually I joined an English classroom. So I started to learn English, but later by the time I realized that I was terrible at learning the language. And I couldn't actually figure out why this was happening. But later I realized that the class used to feel like just mathematic classroom. We used to learn the language just like math. And that was kind of boring and terrible for me, and I couldn't do it. However, every time we used to go out, we used to play games with our friends. We used to feel very relaxed, and we used to talk in English. We were not afraid of speaking in English. So that was awesome. And at that point, I realized something. Maybe it is very fun and it's exciting to learn the language through games, not only just traditional ways of learning the language. So here we come to why these traditional methods do not work and why it's terrible to apply in classes. First thing, the students inside the classroom, when they learn the language through the traditional methods, they feel like the class is just like a math class, just like I did. They have to memorize rules and formulas. They have to go through all these structures, and eventually this is going to have a very negative impact on the students. Because every time they have to speak, they have to share something, even a very simple example, they have to remind themselves of the structures they learned a few days ago or on the spot. So this is a very boring thing, and it's going to avoid the students from learning the language. Even it's going to be turning to a very big learning barrier for students. So let me tell you a story of one of my own students. His name was Muhammad Amin. He was a good student, but he was not able to take part in activities inside the classroom. He was always trying to stay silent, especially during the sessions that we had and we were studying grammar. One day, fortunately, we had a role play, and the students had to do kind of role play. And that was kind of a game for them, and it was interesting for me too, personally. So eventually, the students had to do the role play. Once, Muhammad Amin was supposed to be a passenger, and he had to take his flight. So suddenly, the other students were playing their role, and suddenly, Mr. Amin raised his voice, and he said, "Where's the gate? I don't want to miss my flight." So at this point, I realized, although his sentence was incorrect and he still had some problems, but he was not afraid of speaking, and he was not afraid of sharing what the sentence or whatever he had on his mind. He was not afraid of sharing it with his classmates, although he was very, very afraid on grammar lessons. So here's the thing. I learned that the same experience that I went through, my student, Mr. Muhammad Amin, went through too. So here's the question might rise, why games work in classes instead of the traditional methods. First thing, games can increase the motivation of students. Games can do a lot with the motivation of students. The students are going to be motivated, and they are going to be excited, and they're going to be more interested in learning the language. That's the very first big point. Second, I believe the games can help students to increase the courage. They're going to have more courage, and they're going to have more spirit to go through the lessons and take part in the class, apart from being just silent in the class and just listening to the teacher. And the third very important thing, playing game can help students to remove the fear of speaking. Through games, students are not going to be afraid of sharing their thoughts, speaking with the classmates, speaking with the teacher. They're going to reduce all these fears, and eventually it's going to have a very good impact on the students with their motivation, with the courage, and as well as the process of learning. So when we talk about games, you obviously know that we don't talk about some violent games, but we talk about some games that we can do inside the classroom, especially the language classrooms. The first one is the role play. let's have an introduction with some of the games that we can actually play and apply them inside our classrooms as teachers. First one is the role play. In the role play game, students are going to take different roles. Let's say one student is going to be a passenger, the other student is going to take the role of a taxi driver. Maybe one student takes the role of a tourist, the other student is going to take the role of a tourist guide. So here they will have to talk to each other and they're going to have their own specific situation. In this activity, the students can learn how to use the English language in a specific and real life situation. So the activity, the language that we learn through traditional methods, they are very, very, narrow, and we cannot use them mostly in real life situations. However, the role play is going to put the students in the real life situation. The second activity I can tell is the story chain. It's a very interesting game. So here's how it starts. Let's say we have a class of 10 students. So student 1 is going to start the game by just saying one sentence and he's going to start the game. That's going to be the story. So obviously it's going to be imaginary, it's not going to be a real story. So student 1 is going to say a sentence starting the game. And then the other students have to follow up and add more sentences to the game. So the point is here, students are going to increase not only their fluency, speaking, other skills, but also they're going to improve the critical thinking skill, which is a very quite important thing in every student in 21st century. So, and the next one is the mystery object. I personally love this game. So one student is going to come in front of the class and he or she, doesn't matter, is going to describe an object to the other students. But the point is here, like, he or she is not going to mention the name. He or she has to describe all the things she knows about the object or he knows about the object. And then at the end, the rest of the students should guess what the object could possibly be. And this is kind of like thinking critically as well. And it's going to help the student to improve fluency, describing the object. And but I think it's going to be, in the meantime, it's going to be very exciting and fun. So according to a very recent research carried out by Hafiza and Protolo in 2025, they have figured out that the language can be learned through games very well. And it's going to help students with vocabulary and grammar. Rather than just we learn the grammar and vocabulary in very traditional ways, this is good. The game can help the students to learn in a better way, the vocabulary and grammar. It's also going to help the students, as mentioned before, games can help the students to build the motivation and confidence. Because through games, students are not going to be thinking about the grammars, structures, formulas, just like mathematics. They have to speak. And the point is to win the game, not just to think about the structures and formulas. And the third very important thing that can help students to work with a game is that it's going to help the fluency of students. Because if the students learn the language through grammar, structures, formulas, this is going to help make students think about the sentences. They have to rectify the grammar. They have to think about the grammar and structures. Eventually, it's going to break their fluency. So games can also help, according to this recent study, can help them build their fluency too. So as the last and final thing, here's my challenge to every student and every teacher here, everywhere. Next time you join an English class, don't ask yourself, did I get the grammar right? Instead, let's ask ourselves, did I join the game? Because as soon as you join the game and you play the game, you're the winner. So the real players are the winners. Thank you.